Welcome to No Church Church. Today we have April and Lawrence Thomas with us. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Thank you for joining us. Just a little backstory. So you guys were pastors 8 years, you quit, and now here you are today.
That's right.
You can say your life in one sentence. How great is that? No, thank you so much for coming on today. You know, just to kind of push off where we're going to go is we kind of want to do a positive outlook of 2020. What do we think God's leading us, where He brought us from, and obviously, you know, you guys have been through a lot, you know, just in your own personal spiritual lives and then with the church and everything happening there. But, you know, I remember about a year and a half ago, we were talking and you're like, man, I'm in the promised land. And I'm like, what? You are not in the promised land. And it wasn't like offensive, but, you know, sometimes as Christians we think, you know, because we're born again, we're like, oh, we have the whole package, we're in heavenly places, we have all the righteousness, we're complete in God, and so we're like, we're in the promised land, and it seems like it lines up. But then truth of the matter, as I said, well, I kind of think we're slaves, you know, and you're like, slaves, there's no way, I'm born again. I said, yeah, but the children of Egypt were, the children of Israel were children of God, but they were slaves also. And I said, I feel like just in society right now, we're slaves in Egypt, children of God. We don't realize all the financial benefits and everything like that. But then what happened, right? They came out, they got all the benefits of the finances, they got the health, they got the freedom, they went to the desert. They didn't even go right to the promised land. And, you know, I've been talking about entering into the wilderness, which seems weird because, like, we want the promised land as, you know, children of God. And it was just interesting because you had said something to me out there while we were talking. You said, I'm not where I was, but I'm not where I want to be. I'm in between the two. And that's where I kind of feel like, you know, we are right now is the breakout from slavery into the wilderness. It's not the promised land, but it's going to be way better than where we've come from. Right. Your thoughts?
I definitely see that we're getting paid to leave right now. You know, it's like we're given...
Paid to leave.
Paid to leave.
Son.
I mean, that's just the season that I see us in. And we've talked about this. And I remember y'all having this conversation and him talking about it. And it's not so much that we felt like what God's greatness for us was a minute level, because by saying that we're in the promised land at this level would be like you're demoting really whom the Lord is and really what that promised land is. But it was just the starting of this opening of becoming free and not wanting to go back. And knowing I'll never go back. So it was like, to us, it really felt like the promised land, because for once we were free and we felt fine by saying, we're not going to try to do anything to go back. You know, they say people that have been incarcerated for a long time, they'll get out and they'll be free and then they'll do something to go back because that's what they're familiar with. But it was like we were so free inside of being broken out of that's what felt like the promised land, like the freedom of knowing that we'll never go back to this ever. It felt like, oh, this is the promised land for us, because we were in such bondage. You know, if you've been incarcerated for all of these years, I'm not saying we were, but if you have, and then you just get out and you're just walking the streets and you've not, okay, yes, you own nothing, you're poor, you're broke, but just that freedom, how can you even measure that freedom for that man or that woman? You know, it to them, it must feel like, you know,
a whole new life.
Yes. Like
taking everything in, new buildings, new foods, new sayings, new cars. Yeah, I mean, totally different.
Right. You're seeing something as such, you're like, this has to be, you know, this has to be compared to where I was. This is the promised land. This is greatness. Because I've had somebody say, you know, but when you say that or when you think that, did you think that you were demoting really what the Lord had for you? But no, because it was where we were at. It was like having that fresh air for the first time. It was like having, he read a book called Fresh Air, and it was just having this reality that we did not know before that was such a greater level. It made us feel like, okay, this has to be what this is meaning. This is the entering into the promised land.
Well, and you're basically, you haven't pointed it out, but basically financially and spiritually and, with your family. I mean, you kind of got a threefold package that your life has been extraordinarily different for the better in the last year.
Right. The enhancement of what we have seen has been so beyond anything that we ever expected. It was like, okay, this must be what this is. That's why it felt like that. Because it would be hard for someone that has been a slave to go to the level that we went at such a rapid pace and not think of the greatness of that feeling, to just be like, oh, but really, it's really just the in-between level. Because inside there was such an excitement of what all the Lord was doing in us. It was like, it felt more like demoting him by saying I'm in the in-between stages. So how much greater is it that we're not in the promised land yet?
Well, it was interesting because if you think about what happened for the Israelites, right? So here's Moses. He's like, we're gonna leave. We're gonna do this, and then they start all asking the owners to repay them for what they've lost and what they've taken. And they go, oh, well, that's a nice necklace. Oh, well, yeah, I like all that cattle there. Well, I'll take that cart so that I can load your dishes up on it. And these people are giving all of their stuff away.
Right.
And like we've talked about, basically, the eyes of the people who were slaves became open to the opportunities before them. And
some of them did.
Your eyes have been open to the opportunities before you now, and then you've totally gone the route of the opportunity. And now your life looks just like how the slaves did. They had nothing, and now they're walking out with all this stuff. Talk to me about that, kind of that transition for you, going from the one to the other.
I think at first it was great, exciting, wonderful, wow. But then it's like what we talked about earlier. I may not be where I see us. Maybe we want to be here, or not necessarily here, but we want to just keep striving. But we're here, so it's kind of a disappointment at sometimes. But then we look back to where we were. And then what you were talking about, I think at first it was great, but then the battle is always, you either see where you're at or you look where you were, instead of always looking to the future, just like a windshield. A windshield's 40 times, 50 times bigger than a rear view mirror. But you can't look at yourself, look at the gauges, and look at the rear view mirror and never look ahead. And I think sometimes for us it's been challenging to look ahead as a business and as the church, to not be involved in a traditional church like we've been growing up all of our life, me and her both. It's like, it's a little challenging. At first it was great, but now it's a little challenging because you don't see the results, or you don't see the growth, or you don't see, but then like what we talked about, I've always been tried to be the kind of person that, okay, we may not be where we're at, but where we want to be, but let's look at where we're at. We definitely are where we were. And I think as us, from a church standpoint, from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint, we balance each other out good like that. But I think for me, it's been a little more of a wrestling match for me the latter part of this year than it was the beginning part of the year.
And what's funny is, even in the wrestle, it's the best part of our life together.
Yeah.
Even in that wrestle. So it brings it back to the perspective that we know we're not in the promised land, because of, but even in the wrestle, it is the most amazing that our family and our marriage and our life and our business and our finances has ever been in our entire married life. So, like I said before, 2019, I love you. Just what all that the Lord showed us that is capable without laws, without boundaries, without boxes, without control, without leadership, without all of these things that we spent almost 16 years of our marriage life thinking was how we would spend the rest of our life until we went home to be with the Lord. We thought that we were on the path of this is how this is, and that this is where we have to be. If we're going to be in leadership under a denomination, going in this way, working and serving for the Lord in this manner, then this is good enough. This should be good enough for us.
This is the system that you're going to have to stay in, go that road of every other rut down that road, and you were willing to stay that system.
We'll be right here because it should be enough for us.
Right.
But that system in and of itself was slavery. And we couldn't see it. Even though there was a certain, any amount of slavery offers, or any amount of incarceration offers a certain amount of stability and comfort, or else it would just be torture. They don't torture prisoners. They don't, in the States and all that stuff. It's an incarceration. It's a mentality. What they teach in the public school systems is just enough to get you excited, but a lot more to keep you in line and keep you in bondage.
So you can be a good employee.
So you can be a good employee, so you can be a good person to the community to serve the system, which turns around and repeats itself. And I think that for us, there was something on the inside of both of us. It's always been on the inside of me, and it's always been on the inside of her that's like, no, there's got to be something more. I mean, why can't a minister make $100,000? Oh, you can't make $100,000. Man, that's a lot of money. Is it really? Is $100,000 really a lot of money? How much money do we spend on cars? How much money do we spend on gas? How much money do we spend on... It's not. And I think the mentality that's been drilled into us by religious systems has kept us in the bondage. And that goes back to what she talked about earlier, where God's not really revealing himself. It's you taking those little laser lenses. When you have that LASIK surgery on your eyes, they just peel off a thin layer of your eyes and it heals up and you see better. What if that's really, I believe that's what's happening. God hasn't changed. He's the same. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. But our eyes have to be adjusted and focused. That's on us. That ain't on him. You and I were talking about that the other day about opportunity. What's the difference between the opportunities that you have expressed to us and that we have invested in, that we have participated in, and other people who haven't? When the opportunity arises, they either see it or they don't see it. Well, we saw it. But when it comes to pass and everything happens, or the windfall or the money or the market or whatever happens, and it changes and that transaction takes place, people will look at us and say, oh, well, they were lucky, or they were blessed, or God favored them. God won. Is it really that? Or did you just not have the eyes to see because it was cluttered and cloudy and dirty from all the crap that was put on to us generation after generation after generation?
Well, and that was one of the things, with talking about when you said the promised land, I would love to have agreed with you at that time and be like, high five, man, we're both in the promised land, woohoo! Right. But then when we digest it down, I always like to, based on results, really where we are. And I think I asked you the question. I was like, oh, so your house is paid off, so you can go on vacation wherever. Oh, well, you can do this. And then you're like, no. And it wasn't trying to be mean or anything, but just realize, well, really where we are. And are we lying to ourselves by saying where we think we are? If you think about even the Israelites when they became slaves, right? They went to Egypt, and it was because there was food there, because you knew somebody, you knew the king's right hand man, he was going to set you up, everything was good. That's kind of what happens is they went into the system, and then the system slowly digested them in and then said, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're not that valuable. You're not that important. Oh, you know what? You need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. And slowly they got melted in to where their life, and then somebody's born into it, and they're just like, oh, well, this is the way it is. Like you said, you want to go into the denomination. Well, if you want to do that, you melt into that. And it's like you give up yourself. You give up your ways, the way that the Lord might be telling you as an individual for the dominational system. But once you realize where you're at, then you can clearly say, here's where we want to go, right? Run the race. Well, run the race. Did he say run the race, or did he say follow the doctrinal system? And so that's where we're at. Like today, for me, one of the biggest struggles that always kind of overhung my head personally was the tribulation, right? Like for me, I'm an investor, so I got business and I got a bunch of money in the stock market, and so I'm like, man, at any moment the tribulation can come and it's going to shut down everything for 7 years, and I need to get a generator and some food and this. And one day I realized that the other side of that story is 1,000 years of peace. And once I realized that, I stopped looking at the current possibility of lack, doubt, war, death, all of these things, and said, there's 1,000 years of peace. I'm focusing on that. That's what I'm focusing on. And so I realized that every time I focus future, I have somewhere to go. If I focus on the now or my past is ugly. If I focus on my past, there's no reason I should have $1 million business based on my past. I was kicked out of 3 high schools, mind you. I never went to college. I mean, are you kidding me? Based on my past, I should not be where I'm at right now. So if I focus on that, then obviously I'll take that on. If I focus on the right now possibility of, man, if I mess up, somebody will fire me. And my kids are going to, and they're going to get kicked out of their private school, and we're going to lose our cars and lose our house. And so those two scenarios is where most people think. And I want to help today, and that's why, I want to do this about prophetic. What do we see now to where we're going into the future? What is the thing that will give us the forward focused thought of tomorrow, next year, the year after, even 20 years down the road, to help people visualize, yeah, me too. We were talking about, and so just, in line with it, I kind of think about what happened to Moses with him bringing out all the Israelites from Egypt. He was tore up, right? I mean, he was hiding. The Pharaoh was mean to him. There's battles going on with all of these plagues and stuff like that. Ridiculed. He even, killed a man. I mean, like a lot of stuff was going on in his life. And I find that scenario, well, whatever happened to Jesus, right? A lot of scenarios went on in his life. He was beaten. He was crucified. He was punished by the Pharisees and Sadducees. He was ridiculed everywhere he went. He was made fun of. And now if we look at Trump, what's happening? He's wrongly being accused. He's going to court, impeached. People are making fun of him. And so I look at these 3 great men with these 3 very hardships on their lives. Like, you're not being daily ridiculed. You're not being daily mocked or spit upon or, made fun of. And so, like, we think about that. If I look at those 3 men and then look at the greatness that happened after those 3 men, I have to say we're on the verge of something great. We cannot have the leadership of our country go through such an abuse without something great coming. And so that's where one of my things is, if we think about in comparison, so what would I say? I'd say Trump is the modern day Moses, right? 3 years of just torture, and we find it's not true. Well, then what is going to happen, I think, for this nation because of what happened? So then if I look back, all right, so what happened with Jesus? We all became free. What happened with Moses? We all became free. What's going to happen with Trump? We're all going to come free. Now, where the opportunity will happen will be with the people who see the furthest down the road. We'll all become free, but some people will become more free, more financially blessed, more blessed in their family or stuff like that. And so that's where I kind of see this year as a breakout year of debt-free and multi-millions of dollars, being transferred, not so much from the wicked, just transferred.
From the system, from the wicked system.
Right. I mean, just transferred. I just...
Into the hands of people that know how to handle it and disperse it and benefit from it for the kingdom, right?
Well, yes and no. I honestly feel like this. I feel like the word is redemption. I feel like everybody, Christian and non-Christian, is going to be financially blessed.
Yeah.
How many, like, that's what just kills me. Like, we, just a soapbox of, like, we're like, oh, well, Christian people are highly favored. But I thought non-Christian people were God's children. So they don't have the magic sauce because they didn't say the prayer. They didn't go to your church. They didn't tithe. So they can't have the favor of the Lord. Well, then we're wrong because we should not have given that girl $200 tip back there.
That's right.
Because I didn't say, are you a Christian?
Well, the first time they tried to go into the promised land, they sent 12 guys out. 2 of them came back with a positive report, and the other 10 were negative. The second time it happened, under Joshua's leadership, he only sent 2. So I think that this is but everybody benefited from the promised land. Some benefited greatly, but everybody benefited. So I think I'm in agreement. I mean, when God unleashes, or when we go through something as a society or the world, I think it's going to be unprecedented what we go through. And I think people are going to experience the goodness of God that have said God's not good for years. Just because he is good. I mean, how do you confine his goodness to only if you believe he's good? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of being good?
Yes.
I mean,
well, my children have never said to me, Mama, I believe that you are so good. Do you know what my kids say to me? They say, no, I'm serious. My kids just say, they don't even say, they just know, guess what? I'm Mama. And that's enough. Just that I'm Mama, they know that because I'm their Mama, they're going to get the greatest of the great from me. Not because I'm a great person or because I do great things. No, it's because of whom I am. I'm Mama. And it's like they don't expect anything from me because of what I've done in the past, but because of whom I am to them. I'm their mom. Well,
we just went to a restaurant. Lawrence had to go somewhere. And so, your daughter goes to the waitress. I'm going to get this, and I'm going to start with that appetizer, and I'm going to order this, and my daddy's going to pay for it when he gets here. And I was like, she's right. His daddy's going to pay for it.
Yeah, and it's not like in their mindset. It's because they're familiar with knowing whom he is, knowing whom I am. They're not asking, and I'm not saying that they're right or that this is wrong or that it's going to get her everywhere in life doing this or whatever. But it's like that innocence, that childlike. It's like just that comfort, that peace in knowing that my daddy's got me. I don't need to ask Mr. Benn, can you call my daddy and ask him first before I do this? Or I don't need to ask my daddy, do I need to go do a chore before I can get this? It's like, no, it's just something that already is in my 7-year-old. That's just like, my daddy's got me. And so I just see what the Lord is doing. It's not just going to be financial. Yes, I believe it is going to be there is going to be a financial outbreak that's going to happen for us, his children, meaning if you're a Jew, if you're a Christian, whatever. But I also believe that there is going to be a knowing that fear's not going to have a grip like it had. Sickness is not going to have a grip like it has. I told Lawrence, I said, I really see 2020 a year of no poverty, no sickness, no, not in the sense that there will not be any at all, but the mindset of it will not be as controlling as it's always been. I really feel like 2020 we're going to see less mental health issues than ever before. I really feel we're going to see less divorces than ever before, because I just feel like there is not only going to come that peace that you were talking about, the 1,000 years of peace that's going to come, but there is going to come a comfort in this breakout that's going to cause a settling of the stress, of the fear, of the worry. And a lot of that comes from what? Finances. And I just feel like
lack of communication, frustrations.
Well, let's look at your life a year and a half ago. versus today. Are you happier?
Yes.
Yeah.
Way.
So you're totally different than what you're doing from a year.
I'm happier in the sense that I don't have to exercise my faith to be happy.
And that's what I'm trying to say. Like,
but before it was like, are you happy? Yes. But faith I'm happy.
right.
I mean, it's not that you're not exercising your faith, but at some point, faith is the evidence of things not seen. It manifests what you're believing for. So you're believing, you want to be. I don't want to say that I'm happy as much as there's joy in my life. That's not subject to the circumstances. But the happiness that is subject to circumstances is greater than what it was, because I think we put ourselves, 2020 is going to be a year of release and opportunity and just blessing after blessing after blessing. Where did we get this idea that was somehow wrong, that we had to be, but be cautious of that? It's like saying, I want to get married, but be cautious when you get married that you don't lust. It's like, I thought that was the solution.
Right. I should be lusted after my wife. What do you mean?
Exactly.
Right.
It's like, you want me to be don't lust, don't fornicate, don't do all these things, but there's something in that. Boy, somebody's about to email you and they're going to be mad. It's like, even in lust and fornication and pornography, there's some element of truth in that to what God has put inside of us as people. Like, sex is not dirty. Well, money's not dirty. It's like, if you don't see that, you've got to examine why that is there. If it's not such a big deal, then why is it being withheld from people in their lives, especially in ministry, for so long? Because it is a big deal. Because it is a manifestation of the good. Every time God blessed somebody, there was money involved. If you got healed, then you weren't sick no more. So then you went out and you got a job, or you got finances. And when God would shower down, even the prophet Elijah, when he said, "Go out and get as many vessels as you can, not a few." Wait a minute, I thought that abundance and all that was so wrong. It's the mindset. I keep thinking that people. You have to strip away all the influences in your life and narrow it down to a select few people. You have to insulate your circle of influence. Because if you're not careful, you're going to take the lens that came off yesterday is going to be put right back on by some other person. You have to dig down deep. And I think that's part of what we're going to see in 2020 is God's going to at one time just take his hand and wipe away all that mess, and people are going to be left going, but I thought that was important. I thought that was an issue. I thought that was how we're supposed to think about money. And God's like, you're not getting it. So he wipes it away, and then you see the reality of it. If there's anything that's happened in our lives this year, it's almost getting us prepared. Getting us, not him, getting us prepared to be able to handle what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's the step.
Yeah.
I think about it like this. Remember the prodigal. So what was his issue of sin? He lost all of his money. So here he is, comes back with no money. And what happens? Immediately he gets the ring, money. He does nothing, and he gets the right to more money. And that's what I'm thinking. Like, we're always thinking, but I lost my business in the recession, but I lost my marriage, but I lost this, but I lost that. And this 2020, it's going to be just all replaced, boom, right back. Or like, let's look at Job, right? So Job, the incident with Job was what, a year, 2 years max or something like that. And he got double the money, double the family. He could basically increase, by 2 times, just in 1 year. Yes, he went through something.
Right.
But we always forget the end of the story.
Right.
The end of the story for us is way better than where we're at now.
Right.
But if we're fooled into thinking that we're in the promised land already, then it doesn't get any better.
Right.
But then you're telling me that the promised land is as good as it was last year, and I believe it's better.
Well, let's go ahead.
But what you have to also remember is when you're going through, just like you said, when you would think about, okay, if I make this one little wrong turn, I could lose everything. And, God knows that. He knows this about us. He knows we're human. He knows we're parents. He knows y'all are men. He knows we're women. He knows that y'all were created to want to make sure that everything is at a certain level of provision. And He knows that we, the wives and the mothers, we want to make sure everything is at a level of comfort. And so He knows all of this, so it's okay. It's like He is still saying, but it's okay that you go in that realm of thinking, okay, but what about this? What if I make the wrong move, or if I do this that makes it wrong, without thinking about the 100, times you're making more, 100 times more than what you were, because you're not doing it in a selfish manner. Why are you doing it? Because Liz's face flashes before you, because Evie's face flashes before you, because Lucy's face flashes before you. You're not doing it in an evil manner. You're really doing it in a realistic, like, because I have this responsibility and these people that I love and care for, I know that it's on me, Daddy, to whatever, When you're in that, you're not thinking, oh, guess what? Next year, I'm going to make 10 times more than what I made this year. So, you know what? Even if I make one little wrong turn, it's okay. We go there because of not of evil thoughts. So I know that the grace of the Lord covers us in that and helps us. And I think that's why we see His hand on us. And I think that's why we see His hand on Trump during these 3 or 4 years. And I think that the reason why we're all going to experience it in a new realm is because we've been there. Mm-hmm. So we know. It's kind of hard to read the Bible and know what the outcome is, because you're just reading the words. But when you can say, hey, guess what? I lost $125,000 last night, Liz. Like, it was our real money, and we're broke now. Like, I've been there. It was for real. Did you think that you will be where you're at now that night? No. that happened? Exactly. It didn't. Right. But His grace, but did He think that your thoughts of not wanting to trust Him was because of evil thing? No, it was because Liz's face shot up, Evie's face shot up. These things shot up. And so it's like we say all the time, we get His goodness, we get His greatness, we believe in God. I told the girls, I tell my children and Lawrence now, I don't want our family to say that ever again. I don't ever want us to say that we believe in God. Guess what? We believe God, because that's where we're at. We believe God. And it's not just in what He is. It is Him. We believe Him. Mm-hmm. And I can say that because what I've went through. When I just read the words and I was 17 years old and 18 years old and I was mad at God and I'm reading the scripture and I'm telling Him, no, how am I going to believe in this? My nanny just died and this is all I've ever had. For no reason. She was alive yesterday and now she's not. What in the world? How would you steal the only thing I have? When you're in these things, He knows that your mind is not set on these evil things. It is a greatness and a goodness that we feel because of love. It's all in love. And I just feel like because we've went through it, and I'm not saying it in the way that law says it or the church teaches it, or even people that say, oh, well, you can't help me because you haven't been through it. But there is something to be said when you've been through it and you've came out of it to just, you'll no longer say, I believe in God. You now can say, I believe God. And that why do we believe that all of this is going to come to pass in 2020? Why do we have such great anticipation right now? Why is our hope so high that nobody can knock us down? And we all look crazy to everybody that we know. But why are we just able to just stand there and just know that we know that we know? Why is that? Is it because we've went through things that we see different than everybody else? Do we claim that we've went through stuff that nobody else has went through? Or is it that we believe God? It's because we believe God. I know people that's went through harder things than what I've went through that still doesn't believe like I believe, that they still just believe that they have to be in this system in this way or their family's going to fall apart, or their children's going to just fall away from the Lord and just all go have sex at the age of 12 and all be pregnant if they don't have them in church service in the pew every Sunday morning. I mean, I have friends that say to me, there's no way I could take my family away from the traditions of what this is because of what our families reaps from it. But then I'm like, but what is your family reaping? Your husband doesn't even live at home with you right now, but you're in church every Sunday morning. What is it really doing for you? Believing in that, what is it doing? Let's just try one day. Believe God instead of believing in this thing that you're doing. So, 2019, I love you.
Well, like where we were talking about, so I can see the prophetic things, I'm talking about Trump, and you're like, oh, to call him Moses, that has to be prophetic. But think about, Kim Clement did this great thing where he talked about God saying, Trump is my trumpet. And for me, one of the greatest things I hear Trump say is, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win,
right,
you're going to
right,
win.
Yeah,
right,
if that's
yes.
a trumpet and that's a prophecy, I don't know about you, but I have not gotten tired of winning yet.
Right,
Right. I'm just starting to get excited about it.
I'm just getting excited. Yeah, like you said, winning to me is not... winning to me is like going against all odds, and at the end of the day, there's no residue of anything that could creep up and snatch anything away. It's like winning is winning.
Right.
You don't come back on a technicality. You don't come back, if you're in a job and you're doing a job and you're getting these draws for this job and you're fixing to finish this thing up and you finish it or whatever. Winning is not that. To me, winning is like finishing something or getting something in the next 5 years or 7 years. What is it? The 7 years of famine and the 7 years of plenty. It's like, that's winning to me. And you get so tired of it that you're looking for play. I know people who have said,
we'll never be tired of winning.
We'll never be tired of winning. I mean, I just don't. I would be interested to know what that would feel like because I'm not there.
Well, our girls play basketball, and last night they won 56-18. And that win was, I called Lawrence and I was like, honey, this win was totally different than any other win. We've won 42-44 before, but that whole game, it was a back and forth like you don't know. Mm-hmm. There was an uncertainty. But, I mean, every time they did a layup, I mean, the hoop, it was just going. It was going. And they were winning. I mean, and the score got up. It was 10. It was 40. It was, it just kept getting. And something happened. And that's the type of winning I'm hearing from the trumpet. It's not like we're not going to win 42-44. No, we're going to win. And it's going to be like them blowout scores. I mean, it's going to be so amazing that it literally feels different. Not only looks different, but it's a different feeling. Some people say, yeah, but when there's a big old blowout like that, there's not, this and there's not that. I'm like, what? There's no drama? Exactly. Right. Because we're going to be free from all of that.
With most sports, right, you could be a professional team and you can win, like 60% and still go to the playoffs,
right.
And I think that's kind of the thought is, well, we'll win some, we'll lose some, we'll win a little bit more than what we usually lose, and hopefully we'll get to the championship. But, like for Trump, when he's saying it, it's like, it's going to be a victory and another victory and a victory and a victory and a victory and a victory. And
Let's talk about them Lowndes Vikings.
Whoop, whoop. And
they're 13-0 this year. I mean, they've won every game. Yeah. They've just won. I mean, they're going to state. They've not lost a game since they started in August. I mean, that's what you're saying. It's like victory.
And think about the confidence that they have because they've rewarded so many times.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that's a good example. When I was in high school, Nick Hyder was the coach. We won every game that we ever played my entire 4 years of high school. To me, that's getting tired of winning. It's like, there is not even a challenge anymore. And because of those years of winning and winning and winning, people got tired of winning. They did. And now, to this day, they still judge everything that happens at Valdosta High School according to his record 20 years ago.
Because there was so much winning.
I haven't seen that yet. I mean, so to me, these prophecies and what everybody's feeling and sensing in their spirit, that's what I'm looking forward to, is to you just come home, and every single day you come home, you're like, we won again. We won again.
In the natural world, I love history and cycles and stuff like that. And there's this thing with the stock market. And every 17 years, it kind of, goes through this sideways or straight up motion. And, like we know back in the recession of 2000. But what we don't realize is 2000 was the start of the 17-year cycle. And so in 2000, you had the .com bubble that busted, and so it started a recession. And then it went back up, and then 2007, you had the, real estate market crash. So what we think it was two separate things. But really what it was is this 17-year cycle downward. So you got to think, now we just came out of that, and since Trump, we've been hitting record after record after record. But when the market goes in the up cycle, which it's in now, it goes up 300 to 700% from where it was. And so for me, naturally thinking based on results of the past, I'm looking at the next 17 years of just being an absolute blockbuster. And so then I'd say, all right, well, what would happen that would make the next 17 years look like such a blockbuster? Well, one, which is very weak in my mind, is 5G. 5G is coming up. Well, the benefit of 5G makes everything where you're getting 2 gigabytes of downloaded. But what even more so is what you said earlier about health. What did we have just happen in the last 10 years? Gene editing. And this is, I don't know where you're at on your beliefs and systems, but I believe I was taught in the church that if you had sin, that's why you got cancer, or God was testing you, or that you had unforgiveness in your heart, that's why you were sick.
There was a root of bitterness somewhere.
Root of bitterness, and it gave the devil a chance to grab a foothold of you, and now you're sick, and it's just like him testing out Job. Job got sickness because there was some problem. And I honestly thought about that. I got dived into the system, and I'm sitting there, sickness and forgiveness, and I got to pray, I got to repent, I got to do all these things all the time. And then here comes out this strange thing, DNA. And DNA is the one who says if you're going to get sick or not. DNA says if you're going to get cancer. DNA says if you're going to need, have a heart attack or do any of these things. DNA says all of those things.
Right.
Not sin.
Right. That's why when you go to the doctor, they ask you, did anybody in your family have any heart disease? Did anybody in your family have breast cancer? Has anybody in your family?
Right. But what did the church do? They called it sin, punishment from God. And so I got hooked into that system for years and years. And then I see this where the DNA. And so for me, I think what happened with DNA is obviously we know when Adam fell, the DNA probably changed. It probably shifted. It probably, things got interrupted in that. And I think, how great is it that if they can change the DNA or RNA, if they could change your RNA to take out cancer, to take out autism, to take out these things, what would our society look like? And if we look at like Ancestry.com, 21andMe, all of these DNA companies, what have they been doing all of this time is they've been getting all of this research. We're paying them to do research. We're giving them our DNA, and they're saying, oh, these people have this, they have that, they have this, they have that. And even what they're doing is they're testing it, and they're making pure bloodlines now based on DNA. I think what you're talking about as far as health is that there's going to be a tremendous shift in the revelation of who we are physically, not only spiritually, but physically. And we're going to change a lot of these things where people are going to live a lot longer and not have the fear of, well, my dad died of diabetes or, these different things, because we'll be able to change them early, quick. And then think about that. If you were able to do that, Liz went to the hospital, it was $30,000. $30,000. You know, well, if you're not going to the hospital because you're not having to have those things done, you're saving $30,000, and sometimes $30,000 every 2 years or 1 year. You know, so you're saving money because basically you're reducing down the cost of medical because you're creating your DNA to be a properly, you know, metabolism. I mean, all of these things, I believe in the next couple of years, but starting even now, because we've already been in a 10-year process. Like, I think we've done the research over the last 10 years that in the next year or two, somewhere in there, we're going to have a dynamic shift. Now, the big thing is personalized medicine, right? Everybody's like, well, you know, you're different than you, so we're going to treat you differently, you know. And so that's what I love about technology, especially AI. AI, they can take a picture of your eyeball and see what disease you have. They don't have to pull your blood or anything like that. Well, think about all over the world where they don't have those resources. Now they can take a camera, take a picture of somebody's eye and say, oh, you have this, and we're going to give you that. Even Israel built this thing where you can blow into it, and it can tell you what 17 of the diseases you have or not, just by blowing into it instantaneously. Information. So information is changing. Healthcare is changing. The stock market's going to be booming. I think all of these things are going to thrust us up in such a way that we could have never have imagined before.
Right.
Like, I think the boom after the Great Depression is nothing in comparison, because you got to think it was the industrial age, but the technology age, I believe, is more personalized than the industrial age, right? The industrial age gave us roads and it gave us cars, and it, you know, we built a lot of houses and infrastructure and stuff like that. Well, now we're already at the top of the game. I mean, we've got skyscrapers everywhere. I mean, we're living on islands. We're living where we're even doing self-sustainable houses now.
Right.
You know, so I just think, but what would it look like for booming technology in our health industry? And one of the reasons I think about that is the redeeming of Jesus, right? So Jesus comes to the cross, and as we get further from the cross, we're going to get closer to our bodies being perfect like Jesus's. I mean, like, what do we say, right? So we're saying, all right, well, when we die, we're going to get these perfect bodies. Why do we think that our bodies won't get any better as time goes on?
Especially with all the technology
That's coming forward. And then why not? We have the minds of Christ, so shouldn't we be understanding our bodies and how to treat our bodies the best humanly way possible or godly way possible? Because basically we have the mind of Christ, so we should be experiencing these revolutionary technology to help each other.
Right.
I mean, does that not emphasize God's love of, I care enough about you that I'm going to heal you, that no disease will ever come into your body? And we're like, oh, no, you're acting like God. Well, good, I am acting like God because he gave me the mind of him. And I'm going to redeem not only people, bodies, money. I'm going to redeem everything. Well, if you remember what Trump said in his inaugural message, he said, I'm going to give the power back to the people. That was a big statement to me. And Clinton was just on Howard Stern,
Howard Stern.
Stern, and she was mentioning that, and she says, "Oh, Trump's up there, and he's talking about his, doing his speech," and she goes, "Bush leaned over and said, 'What the hell?' or something, to that degree of, what is this guy talking about?" Because it was totally different, right? He says, "I'm going to give you back the power. I'm going to give you back the money. I'm going to give you." He even talked about medical stuff in the thing, and he was literally prophesying to us greater future, greater possibilities. Things are coming. They're coming. God's making a way. He's bringing them here. And now we put Trump on the cross, but he's not going to die. He's not going to get impeached. He's not going to get out of office, but we're going to get the reward of him being crucified like Moses, Jesus, and now Trump.
One of our dear friends that we called him Papa, he passed away a little over a month ago. And one of the things that he always his favorite verse was Ephesians 3:20, that God does exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think. So my barometer is anything that good or favorable that comes into my life. Is it exceedingly abundantly above?
Is it really exceedingly?
You know what I'm saying? Is it really above what I could ask or think? There's only a handful of small things.
Just one, me. But.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, the actual tangible, I have not experienced that in my finances yet. I've not experienced that in
your health,
in my health yet. I've not experienced that he's done what we believed him for, and he's gone exceedingly abundantly above that in certain areas and things like that. But for me, I'm excited about 2020 because, like she said, 2019, we love you. What is exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think really look like? You can't.
What does an abundance really look like? But I'm like, Kim, if you're really in an abundance, would you still have debt? Would you still have, these issues? Would you still have, the things that you're tackling or going through? Well, no, because whenever I think of an abundance, I think of, this greatness that's over here. Yes, we are above where we were, but we're not at the abundance of all that we could think. Because I can think a lot up in here, and I can ask a lot up in here. I'm above, but I'm not that abundance. You know what I mean?
I'll say this. Trump did something, and he cut the taxes, and naturally speaking, you'd say, man, that was an awesome thing. He cut the taxes. Now I pay less taxes, so now I have more money. They're talking about $7,000 per person is being towards the tax cuts and stuff. And what I thought was the reverse side of now the abundance is going to come, and we're not going to have to pay much on taxes of it. To me, the taxes were not going to create millionaires, but when millionaires are created, we're not going to have to pay that much.
Right.
And so there's lots of little things that I've seen to be kind of setting the stage for the right scenario. It's kind of the perfect storm, but the perfect storm in a good way. So I am extremely, above all, in favor of this redeeming time. I mean, I think women are being redeemed, children can be redeemed. I think fathers and son relationships are being redeemed, finances, I think spouses, divorce. I mean, I don't put a prophecy point on just money, just marriage, I think it's an overall redeemed message.
It's a redemption in the earth.
Right. And one of the things I see about it, and this is why it's kind of the pendulum shift. And so if you look at Venezuela, if you look at North Korea, if you look at China, what's going on in Hong Kong, if you look at the yellow vests in France, if you look at the protests in Iraq and Iran right now, all of the drama going on all over the world, you could say, well, the only reason we're seeing it is because we're exposed so much to the internet. So, or is it all the same thing happening? The people crying out for redemption, and because it's like the anticipation of the Lord's redemption, they're crying out to it, saying, "This is what we want," because the Lord's saying, "This is what I'm giving you." And so now the understanding of them is more, I deserve this redemption. I deserve to let my government not hail over me, tax me, hurt me, put laws on me, all of these things. But they can't leave the country, right?
Right.
That's the difference between, like, when you go to church, you can leave the church, but you can't leave the country so much in these places. So what do? You go out and you protest. What do you do in America if you want to leave the church? You just leave the church.
Right.
But I think it's such a redeeming time, and we're seeing this playing out all over the world. Not just America. Not just Christians, not just America. I mean, this is a world event.
Let me say one last thing while we're thinking about it, for 2020. Every one of us has heard, well, we don't deserve this. You in and of yourself, we don't deserve this. I'm telling you right now, as long as you think you don't deserve it, you'll never embrace it. But if you feel like, no, I do deserve this, not because of me, but because of what, it's like somebody paying your way and paving the way, and you not accepting it or benefiting or even saying it because you still think you don't deserve it. That's really not even the issue anymore.
Well,
whether you deserve it or not.
Well, we'll be sitting in the car, and Lawrence will go through the drive-thru, and we'll be at Chick-fil-A instantly. Hannah, Laney, and Brian will call out their order. They don't ask us, are you getting us food? Do we deserve for you to buy us food? You know what I'm saying? It's like there's just something that's just in them. And I know I keep going to the way that the kids are with us as parents, because it's, once again, it's the Father. It is how the Father is saying. There's not, I mean, did you ever feel like you didn't deserve your parents to cook you supper or buy you anything or provide for you or to give you heat or a car or anything? Or was it just, you know, you were just being? You were just being the child of a parent that provided for you. The best that that parent could provide. Well, we already know what God's best is. How much more does He want that for us? So is it really people sitting there saying, I'm not deserving, or is it that they just believe in a system and they don't believe God?
Well, see, that's what I was referring to, was the religious system. The religious system is who taught us this.
I had something weird happen. Doesn't have to do with religious system. It has to do with fathers. So I haven't talked to my dad in 5 years, and for whatever reason, I don't know. It's not like I've said I'm not going to talk to my dad. We just haven't talked. And yesterday or the day before, I got a letter in the mail, and he sent me a check for $1,000. And I was like, what? And so I read the letter, and it says, just wanted a refund for the painting work I did at your house 10 years ago. And I was sitting there, I was like, this is the strangest thing. I haven't talked to this guy. He gives me a check for $1,000. He says, I want to repay you for the work that I did at your house. And I would have had to pay another painter. I actually had another painter at the house also working along with him. I had paid him. Why are you giving me the money back? You know? And when I got quiet enough to listen, I was like, Lord, what do I do with this? And he goes, nothing. I'm redeeming things. And this is a sign from that $1,000. And I'm like, well, I didn't ask for this. And he goes, I know, I'm redeeming things. So it's kind of like where you deserve or you want or you wish. It kind of goes into that well, I can think of a lot of things. I did not think of about $1,000.
You're not thinking about that. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, He's redeeming things that we're not even thinking about.
Right.
And you know, it's like I don't even know what to do with the redeeming of what the Lord has taken place on the earth right now.
That's really good.
I mean, I
like that.
And for it to come in that avenue, I mean, there's something with all of that.
It was just like a 2-3 sentence letter, you know. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything. But then here it tells me, I was not trying to not talk to my dad. So I don't know if he was or not. But then here's the thing is, the Lord had to do something in his heart to encourage him to, one, write that, give that money up, write the letter, which is a humbling letter, you know. So then that tells me the Lord's doing something in his life also. So he wanted to show me, but then he's doing something in his life. And it kind of goes back into this thing. And I'm not trying to call my dad wicked or anything, you know, but it goes back to kind of the Israelite story, right? The Lord had to do something in the Egyptians' hearts to say, hey, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to it's not me or my family anymore. I'm going to give you all of these resources. I'm going to give you these opportunities. I'm going to give you this gold, this jewelry, I'm going to give you what you deserve. And we walk away with really the true value of who we are. The waitress, the true value of what she is based on what was on that tip said 20%. I think it was like $14. The true value would have been $14. What did she walk away with? She walked away with $200. So what is happening? It's above, beyond anticipation.
The look on her face.
Right.
The look on
anything that she could ask or
abundantly.
think, because I don't know a waitress that goes to work with an expectation that somebody's going to tip me $200. I mean, I was a waitress. You barely think 25%. I mean, there's no waitress that thinks, oh, I'm going to receive an exceedingly abundance of about $200 tip from one table that's only a $30 ticket. I mean, no, she didn't think that. That is what I mean when I say that abundance. You know, If you match the ticket and you did $30, guess what? That's just above. That's not an abundance.
That's not exceedingly, abundantly.
If I wrote you a check for $1,000, inside your spirit, that would have been above. But it coming from your daddy, it was an abundance. Not in money value, but in other things that has been in you that only you and God know. That only he is working, not only in him, for you to be able to see, guess what? I trust God.
Oh, yeah. Just backstory. I mean, like, for my dad, it was like, I never got a pair of shoes. I never got a backpack. Never, now if we were together, we'd go to the nicest restaurant or, like if we were spending time together, it was jam up because, he's spending money on me. But like we never did. So then I go to get married and I'm like, well, the woman, they're going to pay for the dinner. I said, we're supposed to pay for the rehearsal. And so I'm calling them up. I'm like, hey, spend this money. It's going to be about $3,500. Mom said, she'll do half, you do half. And he's like, well, I don't have the money. And I was like, out of my whole life, nothing. And then here I asked you for this one thing. Well, he ended up paying for it. So that's why I'm saying for me financially with my dad, it's been nothing. And then I asked him and then he rejected me on the wedding. And then he said he'd pay half and he did. And then I'm sitting there and for years we haven't talked and then he gives $1,000. Right. It is the over abundantly, more.
Right.
But it's not just me. Like, I'm not just saying I did something, I prayed something, I'm a good Christian.
Right.
I did nothing really in itself to reward. I think it was because even the Lord probably knows that we're doing this podcast and says, I want you to declare all of the good things that I'm doing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Just like that waitress, she did not wake up going, I'm going to pray and believe God for a $200 tip. Nobody prays that when you're a waitress and thinks that. It's like he just is wanting
to declare the value of who we really are.
Yes.
See, for so long, what did we talk about earlier? We were talking about like minimum wage being at like $7.25 and stuff like that.
Right.
And then like they're saying, oh, well, we want to raise it up to $15. As business people, we're like, oh my gosh, what would I do if it went to $15? But as somebody who's making minimum wage, what would that do for somebody?
It definitely takes them above where they were.
Right. And I think that's for us is we have to be looking at everybody around us and saying, do I value this person as God values this person? Can we be the prophecy for people in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be the answer to somebody in 2020 to redeem them so that the Lord can say, you're valuable? I think that's what it is. Jesus says, you will do greater works than I do. What did all of Jesus's works, what were they? Redeeming people. Mm-hmm. What are our works?
And then informing them of what their real value was and for them just to go and to be. Not to perform or to do, just to go and be, because I'm declaring this is really your true value.
It's going to be a good year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last words?
Get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready.
That's funny you said that because I used to think about that and I used to think about get ready, and it kind of gives this negation of I got a position, I got to work, and last year the Lord told me, be ready. It's not I'm getting ready, I am ready.
Mm-hmm. Like we've already collected all of the vessels needed. We've already went house to house. We've already got them all. And I mean, we're standing there. We're
the oil's pouring.
Right. I mean, it is rolling. It is rolling. I see the rolling pin. It is rolling over the olives now. We already have. I mean, it is all ready. So the next step of being ready is you're just.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there was, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we heard that message, and I was like, let's just get ready. So we opened up this mutual fund account, we opened up this savings account, we opened up this bank account. We got like 7 bank accounts. Mm-hmm. I'm like, look, you say get ready, not a few. Each one of these is, up to what I don't even know what the U.S. thing is, and then we've got this safety deposit box, and we got this, and I'm like, I'm like the same thing. We're ready. We're not getting ready. We're ready. You drop $50 million in our lap, and we're ready.
I love planning for the next year, and if I look at my plans 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they're infinitely smaller than what this plan for this year
Right,
is.
us too. It's hilarious.
Infinitely smaller.
It's hilarious.
I mean, I find
It
myself,
is hilarious.
Yeah, we find ourselves planning for. We took your scenario. We're planning for, okay, T5, the business, us personally. This is what we're going to accomplish for 2020. But then we have another plan where all these investments and things that we've poured into, all of
they
that comes
come
to
to
pass
pass.
overnight. Oh,
we have
got a
another
whole
plan.
another
We
plan.
got two plan
Two
A's.
plans.
We got
Right.
this Earth plan A and then the new Earth plan A.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we know what we would do. So
We know
it's
how to
like,
be ready.
You said the oil would pour, so pour it on. I'll go get some more vessels. I think that's where we're at. I think if you're not ready, then you hurry up and get ready. And then just be ready. Something's going to happen. Something's going to transition. It always does. Every year. Every time we transition from one year to the next. It may not happen on New Year's Eve to New Year's Day in a significant way, but
Right.
something happens when we transition from one year to the next. It always does. And then it's just going to...
Well, and because I invest so much, if I were to look at Netflix in 2009, it was $8, and now
Right.
it's $350.
Right.
And I'd say, I could have made $1 million on that. But how many other things you could have
Right.
also made $1 million on?
Right.
So it's not, well, if you didn't do this investment, you're a loser. I'm telling you, the abundance of investments are going to be all over the
Right.
place.
The opportunities are. There's more. There's more.
Way more.
There is more.
I
Way
mean,
more.
even for us to think about 20 years ago that we could invest into a Bitcoin, that wasn't even on the radar of something, and call it cryptocurrency. Didn't even have a name for it, 20 years ago. And then here now today, got millions and billionaires. There's so many opportunities that we haven't even seen come to the forefront that we're going to be able to invest in. But the number one thing to invest in is your own personal plan, your own personal truth of your talents and your skills and your abilities, because I think that's one of the quickest ways that God can increase you.
I agree.
Last words?
That's it.
That's it. 2020.
2020.
The redeeming. Be the redemption for somebody else. That's what I like. For me, the money is redeeming. Like, it's the money is the power to redeem all the value back that we've stolen from people.